Round of applause for Diego. Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you. All right. Okay, I'm kind of glad I'm starting. Welcome. Thanks for having me. What I want to do today is talk about the work broadly, a broad, quick introduction to the works of Flusser, which is this Brazilian Czech philosopher of media, and wrote a lot about photography. And so especially his book, which in English was called Towards the Philosophy of Photography from 1984. And that's part of his greater arc of work dealing with just how humans communicate through symbols. And so he, from visual communication to text communication, all the way to what he calls the technical image. And what I like about this book is that in Portuguese, it's just called Black Box Philosophy, which sets up this kind of mysterious thing. But it was written in the 80s, where we were already super used to photographic equipment, but video, I think, was becoming more of a common thing. So that's sort of the context of when this came about. And just sort of to very briefly talk about what is, a black box that can be a very useful concept. So in engineering, system design of systems, it's just a way of us to, once we know enough about something and we've worked with it long enough, that we can just sort of wrap it up and we don't have to worry about its content. So it's a way to abstract detail, and it's very useful when we do it in a sort of bottom-up kind of way. And so I teach my students how to do this. It's useful in like programming and so on. And so, But what Flusser is sort of worried about is what happens when everyone has a black box, but we really don't know how they work, but we only know how to activate them. And this tends to give technology a kind of mysterious aura and a sense of autonomy and independence, where we become mere operators of this technology. We're just sort of their employees or servants. And he sees this as a kind of anti-rationalist or kind of anti-intellectual turn, where we're hiding knowledge from ourselves and from each other, and we're sort of delegating a lot of choices to the machines. And so delegating aesthetic choices in this case. I wonder what he would think of our current situation, where everyone has not just like a camera, but a very simple camera in our pockets, And another thing that he says that I think is really interesting is that without sort of criticism and some sort of critical use, that the output of these machines remain undecoded. And so the black boxes succeed in programming society to work for their own benefit. It's kind of this magical thinking in some ways, but we, through the use of technology where we don't know how to fully decode their outputs, we become part of this feedback mechanism in the interest of progressing technological improvement. And so I think, again, like reading this today and thinking about where we are in terms of technology, image making, it gives us this other sort of like, wow, what did he know that we didn't know? Or what was, how pertinent is this even sort of today? So, and what I like about this book in particular, a lot of his works, it smells of Benjamin or Simondon or McLuhan and cybernetics, but he doesn't spell that out. He just sort of says he wants to start things from scratch, which I think makes the work a lot more accessible in a lot of ways. And the Brazilian version of the book even starts with a glossary. So it's sort of like backwards, which I think is nice. It's where he gives his more specific definitions of some of the words that he will use or that he'll redefine. And I just wanted to point out a couple of these, that he talks about the apparatus as a toy that simulates thought, and where an automatic machine is an apparatus that has to obey a specific program. And to decode something is to demonstrate the significance of a symbol. And that's what we do when we look at images or we look at the outputs of these black box devices. And idolatry is the inability to read off ideas from images, despite our ability to read them. And so it gives this sort of like worship of image aspect. And if we think of cameras as black boxes, for sure, they can be very complex and there's a lot that goes into them. But if we now sort of think of how the technology that we use to create images, so sort of AI systems, that these are black boxes all the way down and all over the place. That, this here's a diagram from Kate Crawford and Vladan Joler's Anatomy of AI, where they mapped out everything that goes into an Alexa voice recognition system. And there's no person or small group of people that can really understand or replicate how this works. That is the level of the number of components to the system and how everything is sort of hidden, even if you're working with this, that it's sort of black boxes from, top down. And so just to think of what sorts of choices are we really relegating to the machine in this situation? What sort of, I don't want to say ignorance, but what lack of knowledge are we participating in? And in this, to kind of connect to image making today, the title is a play on Mackenzie Work's book, Capital is Dead, Is This Something Worse?, which is about how information has created a new kind of ruling class. And the images are images created by a model that was trained with synthetic images, and sort of how it just loses track of, what a face is and just regurgitates this kind of thing. But what I want to finish with is another pair of terms from Flusser's glossary, one which is a functionary, which I think it's a more common word in Portuguese. I don't know about German, but it's sort of like an employee. But, he says this is a person who acts in the function of an apparatus. And on the other hand, he puts the photographer, who is a person who attempts to place within the image information that is not predicted within the program of the camera. And so this is like a nice point of provocation or a nice point of pressure to think about where in our current image generation systems do we have these breaches or these openings to really create unpredictable anything, because we sort of created the library of Babel version of image creation. Everything is programmed into these systems. What is left for the human to intervene and create something unpredictable or something that speaks to what's outside of the image? I think that's really the point of a lot of Flusser's work. So I think I went over 8 minutes, so thank you.